maintain the finest fighting force that the world has ever known. 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 The world has ever known.
I don't personally have any difficulty with the word mercenary. I just don't like the image that it conjures up in most people's mind.
It's like any other thing in global finance. It's just the military trade. Contractors don't really count as boots on the ground.
One down, ready to go.
From a Sierra Leone government perspective, the Iraq recruitment was considered a good deal.
I've been in Iraq for 1 year, 8 months with the US government.
We have a mismatch between the way we imagine war to be and the reality of the 21st century.
Can we go a little lower? Could we find someone that will do it for board and room? You know, you get what you pay for.
BBC World Service.
The US troops have left Iraq. However, America continues to maintain a high presence in the country, with the largest US embassy in the world.
The situation in Afghanistan has entered a crucial phase. The international troops have begun handing control over to the Afghan forces. The security situation remains critical in the country.
Since 2011, up to today, we are now supplying manpower to Afghanistan and Iraq. This is HR's room, Human Resources room. So you are like asking about the files. These are the files. All these are files. Most of these guys, some of them, they have already left Afghanistan. They're in Afghanistan right now. They're making money. Yeah.
How many of the persons that you're sending out have used to be child soldiers in the war?
No, I can't tell. I can't tell that.
How many do you think?
I can't tell. Because we deal with many people. And we don't just say this and this and this.
President inspecting guards mounted by officers and recruits.
Okay, so I brought the children you want. There you are. In Africa here, even by the age of 4, you learn how to fight. This is our tradition. If you don't know, fight with sticks, with a spear, with arrows. That's the tradition. So if you are trying to think that this may disorient them psychologically and so on, that is not the case.
Some may be critical of people who used to be fighting when they were very young, that they now go to war. Do you think that's a problem?
No, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. It's just a perception. People take it in that format, but it's just a perception.
And even if they had started when they were 12 years old or 11 or 13, that's not a problem?
That's not a problem. That's the job, that's the career, his career, yeah. When we send guards to war areas, we first train them. They go physical training. The army, most American, resorted to use Ugandan because of their discipline. There are people who can listen. What you tell them is what they do. And they understand English.
Okay, listen to me. NMC goes.
Uganda shoot, those who qualified, they can work. We get companies which can come and contract us. We supply manpower to them. For example, we have been dealing with agents for some good time.
Industry is a part of how the countries fight wars today. The U.S. government doesn't track the number of contractors it uses in places like Iraq or Afghanistan. We know it's a lot. We don't really know exactly how many. I spent several years working within the industry. I have a military background, and one of the differences between being a soldier, I found, and being a private military contractor is that when you work for the U.S. military or any military, you take a sacred oath that you're going to serve and fight for your country and, if necessary, die to protect a way of life, one that you believe in.
I am an American soldier.
I'm a warrior and a member of a team.
I will always place the mission first.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never quit.
I will never leave a fallen comrade.
It's the complete opposite in the private military world. You look at the budget first. The loyalty of these companies and these businessmen change depending on market forces.
We operate in the world's challenging, complex, emerging markets. The Middle East is absolutely the core for our business today.
We serve, we care, we empower, we perform, we do the right thing always.
This industry is not just what you see is what you get. When you see a company, you don't know exactly who's working for them. They hire and they sometimes create what we call subs, subcontractors. Commanders in Afghanistan who just simply say, we don't know who the subs of the subs of the subs are. So you have all these like layers of a contract. The level of quality control starts to fade quickly the deeper you go from the top to the bottom. The United States Army and the military in general is so reliant on the private sector, I would call it a dependency. But we don't know who's the on-the-ground presence of these companies overseas. We just don't know.
It's fucking crazy, actually. It's really crazy in Iraq. Because since the first day I stepped my feet in Iraq, every day there was a bombing. They bombed the village. There is a rocket. Every day we have rockets fire. Every day I had gunshots. Every day bombing, incoming, incoming. Oh my God. A bomb went in our tubes and it damaged 4 of our guards, 4 of the Sierra Leonean guys, well-trained guys. As soon as I reached in Iraq, I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm in Iraq. She said, oh, what? I said, I'm in Iraq. No, you're kidding. I said, no, Mom, I'm not kidding. I'm in Iraq. I said, Mom, just watch the number. Watch the number. And she watched the number. She was yelling, oh, Daddy, who took you there? I said, no, Mom, there is no problem here. We are safe. We are not using weapon. Yes, that's how I convinced my mom. I said we are doing just domestic work in Iraq. She told all the neighbors around, said my son, he's in Iraq, you know, he's doing a cooking job, not knowing that I'm with weapon. Just after the war, in Sierra Leone, I couldn't make it up because there was no job by then. And my friend calls me. He told me that, hey, Alhaji, there is a vacancy. They were recruiting guys to Iraq. They teach us how to use weapons, and we are well trained in Lungi, a camp called Camp Lion.
To this training camp, Camp Lion, I arrived together with two white men from the security company. We're driving out in this small truck towards the camp through this foresty landscape not so far away from the airport. And when we enter the camp and get out of the car, the first thing we see is this Ugandan instructor who is in charge of the training out there, making the recruits line up in order to receive these guys from the private security company.
The white man came from Iraq to Sierra Leone. The white man came from Iraq. He said that he need a Sierra Leone fighter who's supposed to go to Iraq. He said not honorary civilian. Those who know basic about weapons. This is the only people that they can qualify to go to Iraq.
From a Sierra Leone government perspective, the Iraq recruitment was considered a quite good deal, in the sense that they could actually take local troublemakers, sending them away to Iraq for a couple of years, and then returning them after 2 years with money earned from their overseas deployment. This could serve to stabilize security in Sierra Leone. In the beginning of the training course, there were not real weapons present, so they were using these wooden sticks. It was first after a couple of days into the training that the weapons arrived, and they were being lined up at these wooden tables in the middle of the big camp.
Pick up your rifle!
There was this tension and excitement also, but tension mainly because now it's actually getting into something very real.
Okay, listen to me.
For many of the recruits, it was the first time holding a weapon since the ending of the Civil War. Many were starting to shake, and some were even starting to cry when they took up the weapons and not being able to handle them.
That day, the very day I went back at Camp Lion, preparing to Iraq, preparing for another war. My memories came back from the past. I started weeping, seriously. And up to now, when I'm saying this, when I'm thinking, it was not good for now. Thinking bad about the past. Yeah.
I was crying. I said I was supposed to hold weapon again. I said this is not my decision to hold weapon again. But only I survived my life in weapon.
The Sierra Leonean War has been fought mainly by young combatants.
Unload!
If you're looking for young men to perform military jobs, the chances are quite good that they have also been child soldiers.
I was 13. When the rebel came in, they take like this direction. They took my father, my mother, and put them on the floor. I said, "No, it's my father. I will cry. I will cry. It's my father." Two people holy said, the one slaughtered. Just one time, fall. The general said, "You will stay with me. I will feed you. I will take care of you. I give you a weapon. They fight with us." I said, "No, I don't know what is fight. What are you talking about?" He said, "I will show you how to kill."
You need to shoot your parent. That can show you that you have in mind to shoot another person. If not that, every time you remember, you think that I've killed my father, I've killed my mother. Who next again I cannot kill?
They said, "Tomorrow you can go into training how to fire this gun." I said, "No, I don't want to train." So I started arguing with them, then started use the knife, started put it in my body, started mark me in my body. This arm, then burn the knife, burn it in the hot fire, then drop it. I said, "You are still crying for your mother. It can make you forget about your mother." So I started cool my heart.
When I was young, there are a lot of things that I've been seeing there. A lot of them, which is not good for human being. What we did is because of, at the job, you have your commandant. When they say go there and harass those people, you have to do that. By then you don't do that, you too have been killed.
When we think of war and the warrior who fights it, we have this image in our mind of a man in uniform. In uniform means they're fighting as part of a military, serving a nation. The cause that they fight for, therefore, is political patriotism. And yet, when you look at the wars of the 21st century, they don't match those assumptions anymore. Now we have outsourced a lot of our warfare to private military companies. The background of this changing nature of war and who fights it, that dates back to the very start of the private military industry itself.
The private security industry is a dark and murky industry. There were outright mercenaries who were bringing down governments for the cash.
Can you explain what exactly Sandline International is and what you do in it?
Sandline is a company that provides military consultancy services for governments or large corporations.
At the time, the idea was to get very posh English officers on top of these private military companies. And Tim Spicer was an officer in the military, the British military. He got out and was asked to come help with a company called Sandline
Tim Spicer's arrival gave an almost instant sense of respectability to what had previously been a mercenary world.
I mean, I don't personally have any difficulty with the word mercenary. I just don't like the image that it conjures up in most people's mind.
The first time I met Tim Spicer, I was interviewing him for a newspaper. He's dashing and charming, public school educated, guards officer. And that really wasn't massively a feature of the industry before then. It changed the agenda, the global agenda, on what a private military company was.
Tim Spicer was considered a respectable head of a mercenary organization. But at first, his business affairs didn't go too well. He was dogged by failure. For example, he got a phone call from a fellow, an Indian with a Thai passport, who was under house arrest for a financial scandal. And he contacted Tim Spicer and wanted him to restore the president of Sierra Leone. Once the president of Sierra Leone was back in power, this guy would then get his contracts for diamonds and be able to make money. But it didn't work out that way.
The company, Sandline, run by Tim Spicer, a former Army colonel, is under investigation by Customs and Excise and is accused of smuggling weapons illegally.
When a private firm gets involved in foreign politics for the benefit of a criminal, you have to stop and ask, okay, did this really happen? Or is this a fictitious, James Bond type story? But it was a true story.
These things tended to happen to Tim Spicer a couple of times, but he'd always somehow managed to get away assigned.
The recently retired British colonel who led a band of mercenaries is safely back in this country. So has this put him off his new career as a hired gun? Are you going to continue with this new business of yours at Sandline International?
Well, I think we've got a number of lessons to learn from this particular episode. I think that we will continue to try and develop our business as long as we can do it in a sensible way.
Sandline eventually collapsed under the weight of bad publicity. Was that a failure? In the short term, you could say that was not a successful company in terms of delivering an enormous amount of money to its shareholders and so forth. Conversely, it launched Tim Spicer on a career where he was able to found what would then become one of the most significant private military companies in the world, Aegis.
When 9/11 occurred, everything changed. The contractor content of the armed forces went up astronomically.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq.
Ideologically, Republicans, my party, wanted every single public function to be scrutinized, analyzed, evaluated, and if possible, privatized.
General Shinseki, the head of the U.S. Army at the time, testified to Congress and said, if we're going to do Iraq, it's going to take several 100,000 U.S. troops. And very quickly, the rest of the Bush administration reacted negatively. He's absurd, that's crazy, it's not going to require those amount of troops, and they actually essentially drummed him out of the military. It turned out he was right. We did deploy several 100,000 forces. It was just through private military.
So in the early days of Iraq, it was a gold rush. You had companies coming out of nowhere, including Blackwater. It was really like a cowboy wild, wild west when nobody had any control. Anybody doing anything with firearms in this country could say they're a private military company. It was an ATM for these companies.
Well, the basic idea of a contractor versus recruiting, training, and supporting military vets is the difference between hiring a prostitute or getting married. So instead of a soldier who has an X cost of A, you're now paying a contractor who is being paid A times 10. Well, what has happened is that America has basically married a prostitute and has been actively paying them for a very long period of time.
I lost power yesterday for a little bit, and that's what it was. So, good example of shit fuel.
Next time you invade a country, there's going to have better fuel.
Right, goddamn it.
If I'd known the fuel was so shit in Iraq, we'd have gone straight to Iran.
We're saying they have WMD now.
Yeah, this time we won't get wrong. We'll make sure it's there.
The shift from using private military contractors for understandable tasks to using private military contractors wholesale, in my view, took place without much debate at all. Everybody loved it.
Contractors offer some gray area benefits to politicians. Everybody's concerned, like, do we have 1,000 boots in the ground? Nobody ever asks how many contractors are there. They just don't really count as boots on the ground. So if the US military wanted to put 1,000 boots in the ground and there's 4,000 contractors, it's a way of, having a force of 5,000, but without politically risky.
داخل المطار شلون ترميني؟ ورا فوق ورا شلون يضربني؟
They're shooting at you? At you?
Yes.
Yeah? Here?
Yes.
Us? You?
Bang, bang. So,
Did you hit his car or just shoot in front of him?
I shot in front of him. It may have fucking ricocheted and hit his car, but... Exactly. Piss on it, right?
The private security companies had the sensitivity of a rampant bull elephant. Civilians would often, if not always, get caught in the crossfire. What governments have always done is they would do two things at once. You fight and you win hearts and minds. Private military companies did not do that. Private military companies were on the ground opening fire. They were very, very noticeable. They would play rock music. This was not, there was no subtlety to this. This was not even the military were more discreet than the private security companies. So what they were was they were a very, very public slap in the face for the average Iraqi on a daily basis.
It's a real problem for the military. So we felt the contractor presence in Iraq in particular, but Afghanistan too, was becoming contrary to what the mission was for the armed forces. Therefore, their presence was more danger than it was help.
Push him through.
You got him, Chris?
Yep, got him.
All right, dude.
Everybody's turning around at that traffic circle.
They're probably trying to get away from us.
The problem was that we had all of these different private military companies running around. We'd outsourced too quickly, and they weren't coordinated both in contract terms, but also in on-the-ground operational terms. So what is your answer to a problem of outsourcing? Outsource more. We outsourced it to a private military company to coordinate it.
This seemed to be ideal for a U.S. company. It was a huge contract. It was $500 million or just under that. And it was just assumed that one of the large, big American companies would win it, but it didn't work out that way.
Colonel Tim Spicer hit the headlines a few years ago during the Arms to Africa affair involving his old company, Sandline. But Colonel Spicer now has developed a thriving business in private security, and he recently won that multi-million-pound contract. Well, Tim Spicer's with me now. Tim, good morning. What's your summary of the situation in terms of chaos or law and order?
I would only advise people to go there if the measures put in place for their protection are sound.
Contract in Iraq was to oversee the communication and coordination for all of the private security companies on the ground. In effect, it meant that they were the general in charge of all of the private contractors. Now, at that point, the US military was the largest military presence in Iraq. But if you added together all of the private military contractors, Spicer was effectively in charge of the second largest armed force in Iraq.
Spicer is a fairly well-known figure in British political and media circles. But at the time of the award of the contract for Iraq, it was awarded by a logistics contracting cell in Virginia, not in Iraq, by a group of, essentially acquisition bureaucrats who had no experience with the private military industry, no knowledge of the different players, and referred to him as that British guy.
Security contractor, when they heard that this company called Aegis won this contract and that the people that were working for him were South Africans and not American, there was fury.
When you're applying for these contracts, your bid will include you and your business's personal history. It doesn't say, and oh, by the way, we were involved in this international controversy that almost cost the foreign minister his job.
The Aegis presence in Iraq was relatively scandal-free. There was one video which was posted on YouTube from an Aegis contractor who was firing their gun while playing rock music. But no legal actions were taken.
What are your weapons in this battle in Iraq?
For me, it's the ability to coordinate and continue to help the reconstruction effort.
Very rapidly, Aegis became a huge company. And it made Tim Spicer an extremely wealthy man.
The majority of Americans now think it was a mistake to go to war in Iraq.
Public support for the war is falling. More Americans want the troops to come home.
In a brief ceremony on a base on the edge of Baghdad, the United States took down the flag of its command here to mark the end of the military mission.
The US money was starting to be pulled out of the Iraqi field of operations, and the industry had to go through a very complicated reset. Those companies had to realize that they weren't going to get that level of money again. And so they had to offer a different package of deals. That meant they would have to hire cheaper soldiers.
It's narrow, no, no, but more shape. Après, I think que il faut qu'on ait au Caïma, que pas ni connaît les valeurs du fou. Jenny, ni comme on se connaît quand jungle, à somme coquet. A chuk nke bomun ke mama nan taw ni mo toko. So ba so you start so men tapa una kila. Ya attitude of McFate. That different.
When you take that drugs, he always use you as a man. You cannot fear anything. If you heard the gun sound, you used to go there direct. You cannot fear anything. You cannot fear anything. He give you mind, but out of that, he finish on you. You know yourself like you are a human.
When I saw me fighter, so she team something like that, but so she team. Mama's gonna get like some at already. And attention to me saying some gonna do it. Ako pa niya ko dito, kakamana nga sa kanan subat ka masigit ko. Ako beli pasti bukan kolej kata ko. Usman tap dah bumi kat tap kata.
I can ask what you need, a long sleeve or short sleeve. If you say you need a short sleeve, cut it here. If you need a long sleeve, I will cut it here. And that some asks you need a short sleeve or long sleeve. Some people beg me, say, please. No. Some people want me to say, stop that. So I can't because I'm thinking about my families. Why you destroy my families? No, I want to revenge for my families.
When I'm doing quick, then go to line, then put full rebel among me. So I'm about to do all the acts. Then cut behind it.
Cut people's hands, innocent people's foot. Take a drop of plastic, open your eyes, drop it.
Sometimes they will give you just a machete which is not too sharp, whereby even if you can do it on a table or whatsoever, the person can feel it more than he expected.
Kill another. You will destroy the life.
People die at that time. But when I was just
work undertaken by Aegis is carried out to the highest standards of professional competence and integrity. Our track record is extensive, and our highly trained men and women are dedicated to supporting the mission at hand with outstanding performance.
When we first started into theater, we were briefed on Peruvian and Colombian guards, and the natural question you ask is, so what do you pay for these folks? And at the time, and I'm playing off memory cells, but I'm pretty good at that, it was about $1,000 to $1,200. And then, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago, it became Ugandan guards at about $800 a month. And we'd ask the question of security companies, because of this lowest price, technically acceptable rush to the bottom is what some call it. Why Ugandans now versus Peruvians and Colombians? And I said, we don't have a chance to get the award unless we use Ugandans because they're $200 to $400 less. And now on this most recent trip, the company that is winning all the awards that had this, was the first I'd heard of, well, we've got a good strategy. We're using Sierra Leoneans. And so you ask the question, so what are we paying for them? It's about $250 a month. Well, I guess rhetorically, I don't expect you to answer it. Can we go a little lower? Could we find someone that's like, we'll do it for board and room? That has such a terrible country that maybe they'll just go out of the country and be a free security guard. I mean, that's pretty inexpensive. I say that, it sounds facetious, but it's real. You get what you pay for.
The original goal was not to bring soldiers or ex-soldiers from the poorest countries on earth, but the U.S. bidding system requires that you pick the lowest bidder. So it became the status quo in Iraq to have multiple layers of foreigners, as long as you were in the Army and you meet certain criteria, and sometimes you don't have to be in the Army to meet this criteria. Those companies are not part of any sort of high-minded political, human rights, fight the bad guys. They're basically in it for the money.
In one way, it makes a great deal of business sense. You're able to get labor at cheaper rates. But what it does is complicates an already complicated situation.
So you cut your cost, you make more profit, you get the soldier that you want, but you also majorly dilute the professionalism and the effectiveness of those soldiers.
Companies' self-interest is different than national self-interest. Companies are profit maximized. That's what they do. That's natural. Except here, we're not creating, toys. We're producing things that can result in war.
meters, target in front of you. Fire!
What do you do if you have somebody from the Philippines working for an American private military company in Afghanistan who kills somebody? What jurisdiction does that person fall under? We don't know. International law, such that it is, doesn't really have a category for armed civilians. So several governments, including the British and the US government, decided to start creating international norms and standards of how these private military companies should behave. The International Code of Conduct was instigated or started by Switzerland and the international community. A group of companies and NGOs and states got together and they formulated a sort of a self-regulatory code of conduct for these companies. So companies would sign up to this code, promising they would not violate it, they would not commit human rights atrocities or not commit war crimes, etc. The idea that a company would voluntarily confess crimes it's committed abroad. Why would they do that?
The reality is that most golf clubs have more enforcement mechanisms than these kind of documents do.
In about 15 countries, I've been involved in programs to reintegrate children who had served in armed forces. It's a contradiction in terms. On the one hand, Western countries have pumped large sums of money into the reintegration of former child soldiers. But now we have governments like the US supporting these so-called security companies that recruit people and continue their exposure to violence and cement their identities as perpetrators of violence, as soldiers, that make it impossible to ever reintegrate into civilian life.
Now, I work to guard United States citizen. Since I was a child, as my job, professional job, it is weapon.
At one time, when the rocket came into our camp, it killed a lot of coalition forces. I was on top of the tower, looking down where the explosion is taking place. I think about Sierra Leone when people are dying on the street. The explosion is taking all over the city. And at any time, had a gunshot, had a bomb, or whatsoever explosion, I think about my country, what happens here before.
Brought to Iraq, the first thing for the Iraqi demonstrated and entered into the camp, full force. So that time I remember, so this is the war, and this is what happened in Sierra Leone, you see. People running in the camp, they came to the camp, they are fighting for water or light or whatever, they're fighting for Iraq. I feel uneasy again. I feel uneasy. No, this is not good. But because of money, I'm jobless. I don't have a job. That makes me take up weapon in Iraq by the mission.
It may seem like an act of free will. It is not. Young people in Sierra Leone have no jobs. They're desperate to feed themselves and their families. The end result is that it becomes harder and harder to ever find their way back into civilian life. And they may plant seeds of violence wherever they go.
But with weapon, I always remember one thing. I'm the master of my weapon. So when I have a weapon, I should put you in control when you are not in a weapon, with a weapon. Because I'm full control of a rifle, which means I can do anything with it.
Former child soldiers have been trained to take pride in their skill and their ability to kill people. I think it's a fiction to claim that they are somehow stable, that they can self-regulate. It is well known that young people who have extensive histories of violence and being fed drugs and manipulated, over time they develop problems of impulsivity, high levels of aggression. You know, we pride ourselves on being a moral people, trying to do the right thing. What we're doing is we're exploiting people, using young people who've been child soldiers, deliberately sending them into the jaws of combat and further violence. Nothing could be worse for these young people. Nothing could be worse for security.
There's a close connection between this industry and policymakers. These private military firms really poach retired general officers and admirals from the armed forces because they have connections.
I came to rid Basra of its enemies, and I now formally hand Basra back to its friends.
I say that, it sounds facetious, but it's real. You know, you get what you pay for.
The private security industry will continue to act for governments. And you're going to see private companies literally engaging in warfare. These are companies that are registered in our countries. These are companies that have grown on our money. These are companies that are listed on our stock list. Fundamentally, if you're a citizen of a democracy and your government takes an action that you don't agree with, you can vote that government out. If a company or from your country is doing something you disagree with, there's nothing you can do.
People care a lot when a dead soldier or a dead Marine shows up in this country, and we start asking ourselves, why did they die? What were they fighting for? Nobody bothers to ask about dead contractors.
Every American who serves joins an unbroken line of heroes. I am awed by their sacrifice.
Menen gita men no kalawol pinyamgol ala yargol ala goto anda e ko woni jiba joni kadi kure o men hettema ka men hettitama
joni ko menen kipi hano hewtiri gaade hano men wattiniri gaade.
There's no one going to go out and protest in the streets if a contractor is killed.
The country still exercises its foreign policy, the use of force and violence in these foreign regions, but is using proxies, contractors, third country nationals, and in obscuring their role. You think, how did the Ugandan end up in Iraq? How did somebody from Sierra Leone end up in Afghanistan? It's really your money, it's your tax money, doing it, but making sure the politicians don't get in trouble.
Private military contractors make a decision to go to war a lot easier.
As part of ending a war responsibly is standing by those who have fought it.